Our names are Tatiana Tatova and Anton Gio. Today we will read again the aphorisms of Tantra Yoga, teachers of the Open Yoga School. All information is on the yogaclass.com website. There are free yoga courses and paid teacher training in Russian and English. And today we have the following aphorisms, 7 or 8. Here we go. Aphorism 22nd. Realizing these 9, you can recreate the entire universe. You will be the master of the whole universe. You will understand that there is an original inseparable point of Bindu, from which the whole universe originated. Comments by Vadim Zaporozhtsev. If you are a woman in this life, it does not mean that you were a woman in a previous life. You could have been a man. You need to open all 9 doors, 5 on one side when you are a man, and 4 on the other when you are a woman. From life to life, we gain the experience of opening these 9 doors. Here it is claimed that a person who has passed these 9 dimensions can recreate the entire universe. He knows how it is made and can reproduce it. According to the teachings of yoga, at first the Absolute manifested in an undivided form, energy undivided into consciousness, in the form of a point, which later divided into female and male, energy and consciousness. That's why they talk about finding the other half.
Aphorism 20. By recreating a combination of these 9, you can recreate millions of universes. You will live your life as you want, and, having fulfilled the highest goal of life, you will leave the higher. You will leave undivided. Comment by Vadim Zaporozhtsev. By recreating these 9 components, you can actually recreate this whole world again. If you even encounter some everyday problems in your life, then you should not look at it as something low, unnecessary. Because the same algorithm works here. The universe, through these situations, is trying to tell you how it is made. You will fully enjoy your life, fulfill all ambitious plans, and experience all the happiness you want to experience. Do whatever you want to do, and after that you will go beyond the world, and will not come back, unless you want to help other living beings. There is such a law as one synonym for falling in love. A man who lives alone according to the law is head over heels in love. The synonym of 4, 4, and 5 is the vast majority of people who love one today, another tomorrow. As soon as you have reached the law of 1, entered into love, and rushed to meet each other through these 4 and 5 gates, and joined in a love union, then you dissolve into each other. The mind is not able to understand the law one by one, it turns off. This is something that is beyond logic, beyond our views.
Aphorism 24. You have 3 bodies, the dense, subtle, and the pleasure body, the causal body. And aphorism 25. A dense body consists of ordinary matter. The subtle body consists of subtle, astral matter. The pleasure body consists of supersubtle matter. They are united by prana. Comments by Vadim Zaporozhsky. The first body is a physical one. Here it is called a dense body. The pleasure body is the causal body, or the subtlest. Each of us is made as follows. We have what is called our self, which is beyond space and time. The self manifests its consciousness and energy in this world, and it manifests first of all in the causal body, in the pleasure body, in the nearest one in our ego body. Then the pleasure body becomes overgrown with coarser matter, subtle or astral bodies. The subtle body is plastered with even coarser matter, our physical body. In very many systems, the subtle or astral body is divided into several bodies, such as the mental body, the body of the senses, the body of the mind, and so on. What makes all these 3 groups of bodies stick together instead of blurring? This is prana, which glues all 3 bodies together and creates a channel connecting the subtlest body with our self. Prana, like glue, glues our bodies, impregnates them, and spreads beyond the bodies. Our body is like a complex mechanism made of 3 components. Rough gears are our physical body. The subtle body has approximately the same shapes that allow the gross body to cling to the subtle, which in turn clings to the causal body. But all these 3 bodies are in different dimensions, connected by prana. Prana moves through the body and makes changes both in the physical body, in the subtle, and in the causal body. Why is pranayama considered one of the more powerful and dangerous yogas? If you act on prana, you immediately act on three bodies. Because prana is everywhere, both outside and inside. Sometimes the prana cloud is considered a separate body and is called pranamaya kosha.
Aphorism 26. The dense body is the energy of coarse vibrations. The subtle body is the energy of subtle vibrations. The pleasure body is the energy of supersubtle vibrations. Because everything in this world is just consciousness and energy. Comment by Vadim Zaporozhtsov. We talked about having three bodies, the gross, the subtle, and the pleasure body. It says here that everything in the universe is consciousness and energy. What then, from this point of view, are our bodies? All that exists in the universe is consciousness and energy. You won't meet anything else. Here is a decoding of what ordinary matter is. Ordinary matter is energy in condensed or compressed form. At the subtle level, the energy is also more subtle. The most complex level is the causal level of the subtlest body. There is little that can be said about him to an ordinary person. Why is this body called the pleasure body? A person never refuses to enjoy. It is impossible to treat drug addiction, alcoholism, and so on, because it is a natural desire of a person to receive pleasure. Pleasure is our natural state, and a person will never give up anything that brings him at least a little closer to this natural state, even if it's a glass of vodka. A rude person is satisfied with the pleasures that he can squeeze out of his physical body. For a more developed person, physical factors are secondary, and mental questions and thoughts poison his life. And if pleasure comes, it comes at the level of this subtle body, but it has its own ceiling. All drugs, partly alcohol, and all psychotropic substances work at this level. This level has its own limit, above which you will not jump. There is a drug that will give you a certain pleasure, but it will not give you higher. It is possible to help a person to give up drug addiction and alcoholism only if you give him even more pleasure. If you give him more pleasure than he had before, then he will refuse. If you don't, it's useless to take away his pleasure from him. The level of enjoyment of the highest level of the mind. A person can understand everything perfectly, but he will not be able to refuse. This situation is karmic. Sometimes a person closes himself with a barrier from spirituality. It seems to him that nothing incomprehensible will pass in his life, and drug addiction and alcoholism, like acid, eats through these burger walls. And the word heals is unacceptable here. The word treat is unacceptable here. You can give a stronger pleasure, then he will refuse himself. Only yoga can give such pleasure, because it works with the pleasure body, with what neither drugs nor booze work with. Yoga allows you to get pleasure completely on the physical level, completely on the subtle level, and then we go to the causal level, where the pleasure is much higher than any chemistry can give. Yoga is like a three-stage rocket. First, a powerful engine gives maximum pleasure on the physical plane. Then the second stage turns on, gives maximum pleasure on the subtle plane. Finally, the third stage turns on and gives maximum pleasure on the causal plane, the pleasure body. Reaching the ultimate pleasure, as Tantra tells us, a person dissolves into the absolute. He conquers this world. All pleasures come from ourself. The bodies themselves do not contain pleasure. All pleasures are not outside, but inside. And our bodies are like three filters, so that the pleasure reaches us. It must pass these three filters. For example, I want to eat, and it makes me uncomfortable. I eat something, and it makes me feel better. But food does not bring pleasure by itself, but it opens up in us like a key, what is already laid down at this rough level. Now on a subtle level. I buy lottery tickets, I don't win anything. How do I feel? Nothing. If I win, for example, a car, I'm happy. Nothing has changed, the ticket has remained a ticket, but this information has become like a key to the lock, which released the reserve of pleasure that was hidden on this subtle plane. All your pleasure is contained in yourself. There is absolutely no pleasure outside of yourself. Yoga gives access to this level, brings us closer to ourself. The energy of prana, which connects all three bodies with ourself, manifests itself in all spectra, starting from the gross and ending with the causal level. We all know what a physical body is. We feed him, wash him, bark at him, cherish him, You can touch him. What is the subtle body? We can guess, although it is difficult to single it out, to realize it. But we know it's not a piece of meat, we know it's something more subtle. As for the causal body, most of us do not even guess about it. We are used to explaining everything in a rough and subtle way. In fact, there is still the thinnest body. It is really very difficult to talk about it, because we do not feel it, and therefore many say that it does not exist. The role of the pleasure body is to maximize the pleasure that lies in our self. Our self is beyond, but what she experiences what it experiences is even higher than the definition of pleasure. But as soon as the ego incarnates in this world, the very first thing that is built is the thinnest body. Only then does the concept of pleasure arise. At the level of I am superpleasure. The pleasure body is the body in which pleasure manifests itself most strongly. We live at the level of the subtle body. And who does not live at the level of the body? And who does not live at the level of the pleasure body? Yogs live at the level of the pleasure body. If you practice yoga for a long time, then you outgrow the gross level, then the subtle level, and reach the level of the causal body. At this level, there is little thought, just happiness, causeless joy.
Aphorism 27. Above these bodies, is our self, the essence of our consciousness, and the master of our energy. Comment by Vadim Zaporozhtsev. Our transcendent self has two tools, two abilities, the ability of consciousness and the ability of energy. We can do something in this world, and thus our self will manifest energy. On the other hand, our self sees what is in this world, perceives, and thus, in the place where I perceive, I can manifest energy. If you expand your consciousness, then you will thereby expand your energy, which you can apply. You can go the other way around, gradually increase the energy. And the more energy you have gained into yourself, the wider your consciousness has expanded. After yoga, our energy increases, and accordingly, our consciousness has expanded in direct proportion to this amount. Yoga claims that everything in this world is either consciousness or energy. Your self stands above your three bodies. Each of these bodies is illuminated by consciousness and imbued with energy. By and large, our body is not fundamentally different from a chair, for example, or some other object. It's just that the consciousness of energy and energy are manifested more in us.
Aphorism 28. If the ego identifies itself with the gross body, it falls under the laws of action of the gross body, and suffers or enjoys gross objects and actions. Aphorism 29. If the ego is identified with the subtle body, then it falls under the influence of the subtle body, and suffers or enjoys together with the subtle body. Comment by Vadim Zaporozhets. What you consider yourself to be, that's what you become. What you think about, that's what you fall under. What you concentrate on, concentrating your consciousness and energy, is what you will become. If you consider yourself a material body, then we cut off all thoughts that we can be something else. We close the gates to the top ourselves, if our soul wills to live only on the material plane. No one can force her to live on other planes. Most people tend to consider themselves emotions, reason. They seem to be trying to think about something subtle, but deep down they don't believe it. Until a person looks at it himself, looks up, he will say that there is nothing there. A person cannot suffer, so he can both suffer and enjoy. If he considers himself a material body, then he suffers from material discomfort, but also enjoys material benefits. A dog suffers like no one when it is hungry, and like no one rejoices when it is, because it lives on the level of a rough body. A person lives more on the subtle plane, he has more thoughts and emotions. A person can also experience hunger, but if he is tormented by some thought, then the suffering from this overrides the physical discomfort. A person who concentrates on the subtle plane falls under his actions, begins to live on it, while the coarser plan disappears. Such a person can be exasperated by any thrown phrase, or vice versa, cheer up the thoughts to cheer up. His thoughts lift him up, and his thoughts lower him down.
That's it. We have finished today's charisma. Next time we'll read the next 7 or 8.
We remind you that our names are Tatiana Tatva and Anton Jiva, and we are a teacher of the International Open Yoga University. You can find all the information on the website of the opanyogaclass.com. There is a free online yoga course, as well as paid teacher training, with the opportunity to become a yoga teacher in Russian and English. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Goodbye.